Hi everybody, welcome back to Fibre Optics Redefined with Clearline Technology. It's me again, it's Matt, your beautifully sounding English host, and with me, I've got Rick again. I think that's one of two reasons. He's either in need of more practice on podcasts or he's cheap. Sorry, good value.
Both.
And also joining us today, Dylan Prentice. Hi Dylan.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Oh, what's the best thing that happened to you this week, Dylan?
Oh, well, it's raining, putting the fires out.
The correct answer was being here.
Got our work cut out today, Rick. What's the best thing that happened to you this week? It's raining. Motivational speaking with Dylan Prentice. What's the best thing that happened to you this week, Rick?
Oh, best thing that happened to me this week. I've got two sons traveling across Europe. They're still alive. They've been in Hungary, Slovakia, Austria. They landed in Barcelona yesterday. And when I text them and they don't respond right away, I start worrying. But they're staying up till 5 a.m. every night partying. So, hey, power to them.
They've been to all the dangerous places then.
Yeah.
Have you seen Hostel?
Well, if anything goes wrong, I was going to call you because you're a lot closer to them. So, yeah.
If you think I'm going to 80% of those place names you've mentioned, think again.
No, but I just felt like I had to call somebody, and you were number one.
And I'd have said the same thing. Have you seen Hostel? If not, or Taken.
I know they're staying in a lot of hostels, but yeah.
I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want.
Yes.
But I can't come over and get them because I'm busy.
Oh, man.
Dylan, introduce yourself. Imagine it's a sunny day. All right. And just tell us a little bit about what you are doing in the world of the Clearline technology.
So, yeah, I'm Dylan Prentice. I am the Northwest Sales Manager for Clearline. Been working for Clearline since 2017. Been in the sales game for about the last year and a half. Travel around and teach people about fiber and sell them fiber.
Is it going well?
It's going very well. I enjoy it a lot.
And is it just a coincidence that you share the same second name as Ryan?
I wish it was.
Crazy coincidence, yeah.
Crazy coincidence. Nope, I am Ryan's son.
Oh, how about that? Have you been traveling around Europe? You have, haven't you?
I have, back in 2018.
And you got back okay. So, Rick, there's hope yet.
True.
I made it back.
Knowing Dylan as I do, no one's going to play around with Dylan. No one's going to upset him, right?
I mean, he was with his dad, I think, while he was traveling. So I've got 20 and 24 just traversing the whole place. So.
Yeah, but since Dylan was 15, he was being able to drive any man into the ground like a tent peg.
Oh, he's a passive guy. He's not going to.
Thank goodness for that.
I guess unless he gets pushed into a corner or something, yeah.
True.
Welcome to episode 2, in which we push Dylan into a corner. We're going to be discussing fiber in telecommunications today, people. We've got a bunch of stuff to talk about here, but I think, Rick, let's just open up really talking about telecommunications, what it is today, because it's fair to say it's a significantly different thing to what it was, say, 10, 15 years ago.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes I've actually got hung up on that word. It seems dated to me as far as related to telephones and the way that signals transferred for telecommunications, but that word's evolved. It pertains to all communications, all data transfer, all signals that are traveling everywhere, all over the world at every moment. And it's just an all-encompassing term of what our industry, what other industries, and fiber in general, enabling that is making happen every day.
Because fiber's been around in telecommunications for a long time.
Yeah, it goes back into the 50s when it was developed. Obviously, there's been a lot of changes since then, but without it, our world and the way that we live wouldn't exist as it does. I mean, it's amazing. It's the transfer of light down a core in a piece of glass, and The only thing that is faster that exists is the same light transferring out in a vacuum, say like out in space. So it's just ever so slightly slower, but that enables, again, in the world of telecommunications, that enables all signals, everything we're doing, the fact that we're talking to each other right now, we're using it every moment on all the devices that we use, and it enables the type of life that we live today and also where it's going.
Dylan, you've been around in sales now for a few years. When you're talking to people, what do you find, what's your takeaway when you're discussing fiber in the telecommunications world? How much are people aware of it today, as opposed to they just feel stale? They just think that it hasn't changed?
Honestly, I think before COVID, no one really not cared about it, but the people who knew about it were using it and were aware. But now, after COVID, a lot more people are needing it, but are scared to get into it. The majority of the customers I work with, they've heard of fiber. They know they need to use it, but they haven't took that leap to start getting into that world. For some, it's completely foreign to them, and for others, it's a daily practice.
Right. So education, training. Is it fair to say it's pretty damn crucial that people undertake regular training to make sure that they're deploying this stuff effectively, maintaining fiber optic networks, updating where it needs to be updated, troubleshooting, so on and so forth?
Of course.
Do people realize that?
I would say it's about 60-40. The biggest thing that I push on is the education of fiber and the tools that Clearline has provided for customers to use, like our online academy. I try to push that to at least one, if not two, of every single one of my customers I meet with within the company. As long as you have at least one person that understands it, you're already 2 steps ahead of everyone else.
Rick, you're talking to a guy that's been, you're talking to me, but for example, you're talking to a guy that's been involved in this game. I've been putting fiber optic cable in since the 50s, since you were in your teens, Rick. And now here we are.
Touche.
Once you've got over that part of the conversation where they're just in awe of how you haven't changed in the last 30 years.
There we go.
What sort of core skills and knowledge really do these guys need now to be working with today's fiber optic technologies, which is different to before?
Yeah, I think this applies to any industry. I mean, whether it's an electrician, plumbing's changed. The type of pipe that they run, they've moved from copper to different types of plastics, and things get better. As Dylan was saying, in certain industries, there's some portions of industries, obviously, for networks and telecommunication, they've had to use fiber for a long time. But when it comes to expanding that out to where it's getting into, say, Dylan's selling to a casino, or Matt, you're involved or have been in, whether it's a bar or AV related things where they're doing TVs and stuff, signal transfer, all the streaming that's occurring, fiber is needed. We're seeing a sunset with the copper transmission. So from a training standpoint, these guys have to understand and get and obtain the knowledge in things like how do they pull the fiber, install it once the cable's in, and it needs to be properly installed. Otherwise you can damage it. It's stronger than copper if pulled correctly, but then they've got to terminate it. If they're dealing with our product, it's safer to work with, but with traditional fiber, there's some safety standards that they need to follow. Once it's installed, they might have to troubleshoot it, test it, a variety of things. So these types of aspects of training all have to be addressed by the installer so that they can properly install, get it to work the same way that a plumber's putting the pipes in and needs to not have leaks and get everything up and running.
Right. We touched last time on the adoption of Clearline. I go back to the point that, hey, I've been putting fiber into the floor for a long time, into buildings, whatever. But there's a reason, there's a need now for people to embrace the technology of fiber compared to go back to their old ways, their old methods, their old components, etc., etc. I'll put this to you, Dylan. Are you finding it's an easier play explaining the technologies that use fiber and the more adoption of those technologies now? Or is it really a case of working towards industry standards and governing bodies, and you need to make sure that the fibre that is there is conforming to the correct standards and regulations. Which bit is listened to more by people?
Oh, that's a tough one.
They get tougher.
At least for the territory I'm in and the people I deal with, I would say it's about 50-50. I have a lot of customers who call me and say, hey, I have this weird cable that was pulled in a bundle 15 years ago. Can I use it? And it ends up being an OM1 fiber. And then you get the guys who they want to know what they can plug into. They see their switch that they bought that they just installed in a building has fiber ports on it and they want to use it. And that's how the conversation starts. But I would say it's about 50-50 on that question, whether customers are asking if they can use pre-existing infrastructure that's been pulled or if they want to learn about all the devices that can be plugged in.
Okay, so let's take that as a 50-50. So the 50 that look at the standards and regulations, because there are standards and regulations now all over the world, jacket requirements, heat and burn times, etc., etc. And you guys right at the front there. Not only is Clearline fiber, let's face it, stronger, safer, faster, it's a much, much easier, less skill requirement. Don't take that the wrong way, but it's easier to deploy Clearline with people who are fairly new to fiber than it would be safe to deploy a traditional fiber. So sticking with the 50% of people who are interested in this from a standards perspective, how are we at Clearline Fiber demonstrating to customers who are targeting standards and regulations, how are we showing them we are really taking this seriously? In fact, so seriously that this is the difference between an install that conforms and an install that doesn't.
I can take that.
I was going to say, Rick can take that. I'll piggyback off of it.
Yeah. So as we talked about, or was previously mentioned, Clearline in building product, we do, whether it's UL, ETL, EITA, all the compliance items that the product has to perform to for somebody to legally put it into structures and whatnot. We ensure that that's all happening and for the products that we produce. As I believe Dylan mentioned, with fiber in the home and it meeting certain standards and regulations, and sometimes you have an installer that is just doing minimal testing and certifying that it's to industry standard. On the flip side, we have customers that are installing our product in mission critical systems, whether it be operating rooms in endoscopy arms. Dylan has customers that are, I'll call it mission critical. They're going into casinos and whatnot. They're keeping the places up and running. Obviously, different forms of communication that are going into other structures and buildings. And we also work with ISP providers, internet service providers that are delivering network to homes and businesses. And I mean, having that go down would cause someone like myself sitting here today in our office to not be able to have network, which what that means to us today is basically go home. I can't do anything. So that 50%, what we were just talking about, that is a mission critical, and those installers might or typically do take it to a higher level of testing and certification. And many times, whoever designed the system or owns the system or is purchasing it has a document that is requiring that it meet certain standards in order for it to be signed off. And that is a combination of the product meeting those standards. It's also the training of the installer in understanding how to test, how to certify, and meet those industry standards. And the first step is knowing what they are.
Absolutely. We're moving this to education, right? It's hugely important that every person in the chain, customer included, is aware or made aware of the importance of conforming to compliance, to regulation, et cetera, and not be sidetracked by it through cost, budget, whatever else. By the way, I love the idea of a mission critical casino.
There's a lot of them.
Hey, they go down for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. People are leaving and money's flowing out the door. So for them, it's mission critical.
And for my wife, it is too. Darling, I'm just popping to a mission critical casino.
Yeah.
Needs must. Don't say anything. It's confidential. Highly. Dylan, build on that training, right? Everybody in the process, everybody should be at least confident with the basics of compliance, in their area and making sure that this isn't just a sale of a better type of cable. This isn't just a sale of a modern cable that can do more things. This is future readiness, because I hate the phrase future proofing.
Yep.
How much does it play in the sales?
My honest answer on this is the last, I would say, 6 to 7 months, I've done a lot of not sales meetings, but trainings. The biggest thing that I try to touch on is making sure everyone is, at least like you just said, properly trained, or at least trained enough to the point that they feel comfortable working with fiber. It's very intimidating the first time you strip off that jacket and you see 250 micron fibers sitting there, whether it's 2, 6, 12, or 24 or more. The biggest thing is making sure that everyone knows, at least for SSF. I mean, traditional fiber is definitely a whole different process, but 15 minutes with someone who knows how to terminate or test fiber is more experience than you just watching a video on YouTube. Now, that's a double-sided sword, but we have great videos that show how to properly terminate or test. But in the scheme of things, when you're hands-on with something, you're going to learn a lot more than sitting down and reading instructions or watching a video.
Right. And competency isn't just about that one particular element, right? Terminating. It's
Correct.
about specifying knowledge of the different type, how it fits into the project scope. We regularly touch on people are frightened of it. These are challenges. People are frightened, especially if they're copper-based, not really use much fiber. They've heard lots of horror stories about it. I'll stick with what I've got. They're frightened about it. Change management, I think, is really important. Regardless of the type of fiber they go to, it's managing that change for people. And clearly that's a very key factor in the telecoms world.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah.
Holding hands with telecoms. We should call that, like this episode, that. Are you from telecoms? We'll hold your hand. I think once people get it, once they've done it once they've taken the journey and realize actually the process is slightly different, but the end point is no different. We're still deploying an infrastructure to send signals, but we're doing it slightly differently with a slightly different type of cable. But once they've done it once and realize what's there to be frightened of, they're off. Is that a fair assumption?
I would say that's fair. 100%.
I completely agree. From somebody that's handling a network or somebody that's out doing an install, people forget what they went through when they started doing copper infrastructure back in the day. Figuring out whether it was terminated A or B, figuring out Cat5e, Cat6, Cat6a, all the various things that go into that. They forget what they went through. They look at fiber, as you said, Matt, they get scared. It's just once they step into it and at least get that first few minutes or to spend an hour. I mean, we have our academy. They can work through the modules, learn about fiber before they ever get to the point of actually doing terminations. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's that same learning curve of just spend a little bit of time, go through so it starts making sense and that fear starts going away. You learn about the connectors, about the glass, how the signal transmits. And once you have that foundation, which is what we'll call our level 1, then you go into a level 2, and that provides the techniques on how to terminate, do things like that. And again, that fear factor goes away. Also, as I'm dealing with any installer, I always recommend do a little bit at your shop. Work with it a little bit in your shop. If you're actually going to be going out and installing it, work there. Duplicate what you're doing. I mean, we used to be involved in very large systems that would be deployed out in large residences. We would build the racks, all the equipment, test it before it ever went out. It's so much easier to do it in the shop, prove it out, then go out and do your first job. So we're constantly working on providing those tools. And as Dylan said, videos and easy to use instructions, but you just got to spend a little bit of time and get that knowledge behind you. And that applies to any industry that, again, where I started off at the beginning of this, an electrician, a plumber, whatnot, they're basic skill sets to understand what it is that you're working with and doing.
Let's not forget organic growth as well. You alluded earlier on to when people started in copper world, right? And understanding and getting confidence and being able to deliver happily the copper infrastructures. But I remember when I started back in the day, everyone was doing it. So there's part of me thinking, blimey, this is a lot to learn. But there's a massive part of me thinking, well, I've got to do it because everyone else is doing it. We're all doing it, right? So I've got no choice. And adoption with fiber, and it's happening. However much we tell people that this is the future, you need to know this, you need to be comfortable and confident with specifying and deploying this, the more people that adopt it, then you get that early majority audience. People are turning to fiber because other people are turning to fiber. I need to do this because everyone else is doing it. What are my options? Dylan,
Yeah.
fair?
Yeah, I mean, like you just said, everyone follows what everyone else is doing. It doesn't matter what industry or
Right.
what part of the world you're in. Everyone's going to follow what everyone else is doing. It's the new thing. I mean, it's the new iPhone that comes out in September every year. I have a lot of customers who, in my territories, they work together with each other. And if one starts doing something new, the other one starts doing it. And it's just a daisy chain down to soon everyone else is doing it at the same time. And then they all need to learn and they all work together.
Right. So we're in an influencing world, right? There's never been any more influencers than there are now, especially on the online space. So we're developing the academy as a community space to allow people to come on board, learn the right way how the technology works, but also to allow those people who have already embraced it and adopted it to help us influence, obviously in the right way. Right?
I think Clearline starting in 2012, I mean, we were, depending on the industry that we were talking to, a little bit on the early side of things. Obviously in the curve, you've got your early adopters. We're well past that phase now. I think that from an influencing standpoint, yes, if you're in an industry and you're looking at what others are doing, you always feel like you have to keep up and you want to be providing your customers at least something that's similar to what somebody else is. But I think the differentiating factor right now is you're at the point also where you don't have a choice. Everything's changed. If you're watching TV, you're streaming. We've gone from 1080p to 4K to 8K on video signals. Your network's at 1 gig to 10 gig. Again, it's not just a, hey, I want to do it because other people are doing it. It's a, I don't really have a choice anymore. Many times it's the only way I can truly deploy those types of signals and send those network signals. And Matt made a comment here a little bit, hey, up your network speed here at my office or whatever. You don't have a choice. And that is continuing to evolve every day. And it's not the future-proof thing that was brought up. We're having to install fiber today, not for the future. It's for what you want to do today. You don't have a choice anymore.
Okay, so let's just bring this back because we've referenced a couple of times. But next episode, by the way, listeners, we're going to be talking about fiber in smart homes, but focusing on AV more. We've done a little bit of that just now. We tend to naturally go towards the cool that we get from Clearline. But let's just pull it back to telecoms. There's a bunch of real reasons here why clearly training, practical compliance, general knowledge of today's fiber optics is so important that people keep up to date and buy into the training. How much are we using? Dylan, we're going to the other 50% now. We're going to the stuff that it can do. How much are we using or referencing that to generate the appetite for the telecoms industry? Another tough one, right?
Yeah, I would say that is a tough one.
Let me rephrase it. How much are we utilizing the first 50%, but then incorporating, look, we get that you've got to adhere to regulations, but look, here's another reason why it's important that you keep up to date with your training, that you learn about Clearline technology, because this is what it brings to the table for an area that we're really good at and potentially an area that you can adopt, that you can bring yourself into from telecoms to AV. How much are we using that to influence the telecoms market?
I would say I probably use that not a majority of the time, but a lot of it is the customers that are already using it but don't know what they can use more of it for. They start getting into doing full fiber networks in homes. They start upgrading TVs, video balins. Other than that, I don't
Right. Well, let me help. We've got that for smart homes. We'll park that for now. But now let's push ourselves back to the bigger commercial world, right? The mission critical casinos, the massive hospital complexes. There's something has to go on the end of a fiber optic cable, right? On its own, it's apart from shining in people's faces and drawing pictures on a wall with a piece of light, it's not really doing much on its own. We have to put stuff at the end of it. It's that technology. It's also massively improving day by day.
Yeah.
Some of it's relevant to some of the telecoms people. Other stuff isn't really. It's a case of, well, every home's having fiber to the property now. The kit that goes into those properties is obviously using the latest and greatest technology. But there's a point here that says, well, yeah, but hang on a minute. You don't still need to adopt old practices and not learn about that new technology. Learn about the new technology. Learn about the changes of the endpoints, because it will help you to understand why it's so important to factor in the infrastructure to any project. Let's try and move away from, well, we'll use what you've got and put this technology under it and hope it works. I mean, Rick, that's a fair assessment, right? People don't want to dig all this stuff up. Not if the stuff that's in there will do. That'll do won't do anymore.
That's where we're getting to. Over time with copper, and it's still done today. And again, from a cost factor, you figure out ways with the electronics to send more information down it and keep utilizing it to do that next, whatever it is that demands more data. But at some point, you do reach the end. Obviously, today, if you have the ability and say the walls are open, and again, any signal transfer, any signal medium, fiber is it. It's where everything's going. Yes, copper can still do a fair amount right now, but sitting where we are today, it's all changing. 5 years, 10 years from now, it's going to be completely changed. It's the medium of all signal transfer, and it's where everything's going. And if you avoid it, it's sticking with old technology.
And I also think that, like Rick just said, the changing of the technology, I mean, we think back on even 4 years ago where fiber video bail-ins, where they were when 4K was really popular and coming out, to where we are now with 8K and networking and stuff. Everything is changing day by day, where people want that higher bandwidth. They need that better electronic in their house to run with their full fiber network. They need to know where the limitations are on what copper can actually push distance wise versus where fiber can actually benefit them more in the long run.
What was it we said last time, Rick? Don't fear the fiber.
Yes. To move away from residential and just, again, casinos keep getting brought up, whether it's hospitality, whether it's security, whether it's fire systems, things like that. Again, it is any data that was being communicated on copper. Fiber's allowing a higher level, more reliable level of transfer. So it is in every medium and continues to propagate everywhere.
I'm going to chip in here as the Clearline educator. It doesn't take long to learn. We're not asking you to spend the next 2 years undertaking some massively intensive all change training. It simply doesn't look like that. It's modular. It's structured in such a way that it's training you from day one in bite-sized pieces to make sure that you are competent in specifying, deploying, discussing today's fiber technology. That's what it is. This is not, I've got to go and lock myself in a room for a week and undertake really boring voice over PowerPoint training. It doesn't work that way. That's not the case.
No, it's definitely not. Like I said earlier, the biggest thing that I try to focus on is at a minimum of 15 to 20 minutes with a customer on the proper techniques of terminating testing, whether that be 15, 20 minutes or an hour. I've seen customers, after I leave a meeting, after 45 minutes or an hour, where the next week they have multiple projects that they're deploying fiber on.
Wow, he's getting himself ready for his next review, isn't he? Good man. Well, this has been great. Fiber in telecoms. We want to hear from you. Everybody out there, please chip in. We ask people to send clips of you to say, going shouting out, "Don't fear the fiber." We've had hundreds and hundreds back. They're hilarious, aren't they, Rick?
They are hilarious, yes.
Hilarious. So keep them coming in. It's fab. holiday for 3 in the Maldives for the best one at the end of the year. Holiday for 3. We do that deliberately just to see what happens. I've got 2 kids. We can only bring one. You're going to bring the other child or leave the wife out? What are you going to do? It's just a quandary. It's one of those things. Well, gentlemen, it's been emotional, as always. Thank you very much. And really, that wraps it up for this episode. Next time, we're going to be zoning in on smart home technology and fibre in smart homes. Some good stuff to talk about there. But for now, I'm going to ask Rick to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Oh.
To sum it up on this, again, we have an academy. You can get certified there. It's like any skill. Got to spend a little bit of time, as you said, work through the process, work through the hands-on, at least within the company. If one person can spend the time to do that, then he can help deploy that to other people as they go through our modules and whatnot and get to the point that they're effective at termination testing and installing.
And if anybody out there wants to know what a whatnot is, just give us a shout, info@clearlinetechnology.com.
There we go.
Dylan, sum it up. Quick wrap up.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dylan.
Reach out to us on any questions. If you're in the Northwest, go to our website, find my contact info. Be happy to meet with you and train you on some fiber optics.
That's northwest of the world.
Sure. Northwest America.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
You can be anywhere and contact us too.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Signing off now. Matt Dodd here, wishing you all the best, and we'll catch you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.